this coronavirus comes back, which I think it will, we're bankrupt. When the Fed talks about stimulus checks, well, the only people that get rich are Bezos and Zuckerberg. You know, they get all that money for free. Would I take the money? So just remember this, that money comes from production. And when we pay people not to produce, which is PPP and all that, we're just paying them not to revolt. You know, and that's what happened during the Roman times. UBI, Universal Basic Income. It was also MMT, which is Marxist monetary theory. And, you know, this has happened throughout history. What this marks to me is the end of the American Empire. So that's what happened with the end of the Roman Empire. And what happened at the end of the Roman Empire, the leaders of Rome debased the currency. They were taking silver coins and gold coins, they were filing them and melting them and doing all these goofy things. They were fighting wars, you know, we're still fighting wars that we couldn't afford, they couldn't afford, and they started taxing the worker. And back in Roman times, the worker was the farmer or the yeoman. And so the government, those fat asses up there, were just taxing the crap out of the worker. And pretty soon the worker says, why should I work? Because, you know, I've got to just keep giving my money to the government. And pretty soon they call them Roman circuses, you know, so they're the big coliseums, and they were feeding lions, people to lions and all that other stuff. You know, today we have the Super Bowl and the March Madness, and everything's the same, you know, it's the same. My concern is it is the end of the American Empire. And very simply is because our Federal Reserve Bank, our Treasury, and our government has messed up the US dollar so much that they have to find a way to keep people happy. And so they want to just, quote unquote, print money, which they are doing. So the stimulus money they print, everybody says, oh God, you know, it's because of they shut the economy down and this and that. And everybody says, yeah, so they're going to give me PPP and because our money is corrupt. They're just paying everybody not to work today. Well, it's always been socialism, you know, but they don't tell you that. The Federal Reserve Bank is a socialist or a communist organization, but they'll never tell you that. The more I studied it, you know, when I was about 25 years old, I started studying this stuff. And the more I studied, the more I felt I needed a shower. You know, they were just lying to us. I think of my friends in Aussie, their superannuations, they're empty. And you look at Mitch McConnell from Kentucky here, I think that's where he's from. But when the market crashed in 2020, March of 2020, only 16% of the teachers, firefighters, and police officers' pension was funded, 16%. So they had $16 for every 100 they owed. Now it's down to $6. They're broke. So they're covering all of this up. So they want to bring UBI in so they can just mass produce money. And then, so they're going to pay people not to work so they can escape. Do you know what I mean? So, well, we gave you all this money, and they're going to escape. What they're afraid of is deflation, because deflation means depression. So this thing called quantitative easing, which is printing money, that came out in 1930. You know, well, Bernanke thinks he did it, but he copied it in 1930. And then they have zero interest rates policy. So what that means is they print money and then they pay you nothing, no interest, zero interest rate policy. And people still say to their kids, go to school, work hard, you know, save money, you know, save till it hurts. It's really stupid because the monetary system is coming apart. But you've got to be smarter than the government, which is not, and it's just coming apart. This is a little bit more than people need to know, but you know, there's a thing called the debt to GDP ratio. So when the thing crashed in 2020 in March, the debt went up and the GDP, the gross domestic product, went down. So that's what I was saying. So we produced less, but we raised the debt up. So debt went up, GDP went down. And if this coronavirus comes back, which I think it will, we're bankrupt. Once debt to GDP passes 90%, we're bankrupt. Today it's 115% debt to GDP in America. So we're already bankrupt. And so the UBI is no different than the Romans paying the Roman citizens to sit in the Coliseum and watch the Dallas Cowboys play the Green Bay Packers. You know, nothing really changes. People are that stupid. They don't know. They really don't know. And there's a war on in politics. war in China. Chinese government's going to shut down Hong Kong. It's a monetary war, which is why I always ask the question, why doesn't school teach us about money? That's not an accident. But for some reason, I was one of those geeky kids that's what I studied. I kept asking, when am I going to learn about money? And my teacher gave me some religious answer about the love of money being the root of all evil. And I said, it may be evil to you, but I like to have some. So now it's all coming apart at the seams. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, they're not the answer, but they're kind of an insurance policy against the incompetence of our leaders. When the Fed talks about stimulus checks, well, the only people that get rich are Bezos and Zuckerberg. They get all that money for free. It goes into them via BlackRock, a hedge fund, and it goes straight into Wall Street. And then the guys who own Facebook and Amazon get richer. UBI is a small part of it. What they're doing is they're propping up zombies. And the zombies are companies that are mismanaged, like Hertz right now is completely bankrupt. Boeing is bankrupt. The cruise ships are bankrupt. Ford's bankrupt. And the Fed, the Treasury, and Wall Street keep propping them up. I was watching CNBC. That's another communist organization. But they had this guy named Jim Grant get on there, and he was explaining exactly what I'm saying to you guys. You can't just keep printing this money. And so CNBC asked him, so what should you do? He says, buy gold and buy silver. He says, they're going to destroy the dollar. And the guy, Joe Kernan of CNBC, says, that's such an old idea. Gold and silver have been here since God created this earth. And Bitcoin is the next replacement to that. So for your generation, it really is to get outside of what mainstream media says is the right way to think, and think for yourselves. Would I take the money? Absolutely. As we're talking about, don't fight politics. If they're going to give me $1,000, I'll take it, but I would convert it into either gold, silver, or Bitcoin. If the rich are getting the money, so should I. I said, well, you can justify it all you want, but it's still up to you what you're going to do with the money. I just don't trust my government. If you trust your government, have a good time.